was that? It looks like a stun gun. Jackknife powerbomb. 1, 2, 3. The streak is over. There's a new WCW World Heavyweight Champion. 173-1. And the fortunes of WCW died on this night and were further put in the goddamn dirt with the finger bang of doom. I think I said that right. Oh, WCW, you had one goddamn job and you blew it. Just like you blew it the previous Starrcade, just like you continued to blow it when you literally had your knee and your foot on the goddamn chest of WWE and you failed. You fucking failed. Good job, Bischoff and Co. Good job. I'm John Renton with the Retro View WCW Starrcade 1998. It's a redux because I actually did this about 5 years ago, and today, as of this recording, in case you see this sometime in the future, if you can see into the future, stop killing somebody's race in the future. We already did that. I know you do that. Totally screwed up that quote, but nevertheless, WCW Starrcade 1998 took place at the MCI Center, the same venue that hosted the previous year's Starrcade, and would host the following 2 years of Starrcade. And my oh my, there's a little bit of history to dive into, but I want to know your thoughts on WCW Starrcade 1998 in the comments, please. Do you feel it was the right time to end Goldberg's streak? I would argue that if you didn't end it here, you should have ended it at Halloween Havoc. DDP could have had a nice 2-month run. Listen to the pop that DDP got when he hit the Diamond Cutter. It was incredible. Now, the crowd was reacting. I'll get into that in a little bit, but the fortunes of WCW were not great at this point. They were still doing pretty well in the ratings, and they were still doing pretty well comparatively as far as pay-per-view buy rates, but as I'll talk about here, So anyway, the tagline was, "Who's next? The challenge has been issued," but 1997 was the most bought WCW pay-per-view in history by a goddamn country mile and then some. 17,500 fans in the MCI Center in Washington, D.C. 700,000 pay-per-view buys. According to WrestleNomics, shout out to WrestleNomics. Thurston Howell III, as a podcaster, says, but a lot of great people at WrestleNomics have a lot of these facts and figures and everything. In 1998, this particular event, 16,000 fans, well, 16,066. Okay, a little bit lower, but honestly, still a pretty goddamn solid crowd. 460,000 pay-per-view buys. A sizable drop, but that being said, considering that you had all the backstage turmoil and stuff like that going on with the impending AOL Time Warner merger on the horizon, even though it wasn't made official until about 13 months after this, well, almost 12 months after this now that I think about it. Yeah, this whole thing was about to really turn sour, as it were. Not nearly as sour as a retro review that I actually did recently of Starrcade 1999. Not just because I am a sour son of a bitch when it comes to reviewing wrestling, but the 17,500 fans from 97, the 16,000 fans from this particular event, 8,582 fans, and 145,000 pay-per-view buys. 145,000 pay-per-view buys. What a goddamn drop. But 2000 had 6,596 fans, and I can only imagine some of those had to be papered, because and they were running the MCI Center, which is like 18,000, 19,000 as far as capacity. 50,000 pay-per-view buys. Let's talk about going back to the 460,000 pay-per-view buys for this particular event. Now, Halloween Havoc 98, World War III 98 weren't exactly that well received for a variety of reasons. At least they didn't go overtime like they did at Halloween Havoc 98 when they did this event, but sold out 99. And you could watch that event, and there was a lot less crowd reaction for that particular event because people felt very, very subdued and muted and stuff like that. So 10,833 fans, 330,000 pay-per-view buys, and considering the sold out has never exactly been a well-received show, or was not a well-received show, so much so that it was replaced by Sin in 2001, one of the last 3 pay-per-views that WCW did. Still, Charleston, West Virginia, stronghold of Crockett Promotions, and a rich history of professional wrestling in the state of West Virginia. 10,800 something isn't too bad. Super Brawl 99, though, actually had a higher buy rate than Starrcade 98 with that hyped up main event. And Starcade, Super Brawl 9, by the way, was pretty goddamn dog shit. I mean, it had a few decent moments, but 485,000 pay-per-view buys, Oakland, California, 15,800 some odd fans. That's a big goddamn deal. And then you go to Uncensored 99 that was in Louisville, 325,000 pay-per-view buys. And that was the last pay-per-view for WCW to hit 300,000. That was the last WCW pay-per-view to hit 300,000 or more pay-per-view buys. There would be some that would still be in the 200,000, such as Spring Stampede, 99. You could check out retro reviews of these particular events on the Real Honest Movie Reviews, or Real Honest, the old school wrestling reviews stuff. I've done a lot of movies and everything, so I guess I'm just trying to plug that. Check out my movie reviews as well. So 17,690 in the Tacoma Dome. I was not at that particular event. Part of me wishes I was, but also it's fucking Tacoma. But for that venue, it would be a sellout for the stage. That is a 21,000 seat capacity building if you opened up everything and didn't have a huge stage. So, yeah, that had 255,000 pay-per-view buys and was also the last WCW pay-per-view, or that was the only WCW pay-per-view in Tacoma, and that was, yeah, one of the last ones actually to hit 200,000. I think Halloween Havoc 99 hit 230,000 or so, if I remember right, because I retro-reviewed that recently, and then it all went downhill. And then we go to St. Louis for Slamboree 99 in May of that year. 20,516. Could have been papered somewhat, sure, but that's still a pretty sizable crowd. And it had 195,000 pay-per-view buys. The wheels were starting to come off the goddamn thing. And that's the first WCW pay-per-view that has hit, or that didn't hit 200,000 since Fall Brawl 97. That was around the same amount. It was 185, 190,000. Still, pretty big goddamn deal. So now we go to the actual event. So Pyro and all that, and the announcers pitched to a QVC ad that Bret Hart, Luger, and Jericho were going to be part of. QVC. That's back when QVC was like just really rising up and getting a lot more prominent. So Mean Gene plugs his 1-900-909-9900 line. Kids, get your parents' permission before calling. And I love Mean Gene. And I'm always happy to see Mean Gene on shows like this. But the one thing I realized about a lot of WCW pay-per-views, and this is something they rectified with Spring Stampede 99, for the most part, even though there were a couple things that had issues, that was more action-based and didn't have as much backstage stuff. And it just relied on a lot of really good action. This, unfortunately, was a prime example of them stalling for time. Now, granted, considering that Luger wasn't actually competing in the goddamn on the goddamn show, Bret Hart made a run-in. Bret Hart wouldn't actually wrestle on another WCW pay-per-view, I think, until Uncensored, or I'm trying to think, Spring Stampede, maybe? He did not compete on a pay-per-view for a bit. You didn't have Booker T on this goddamn show. I can't remember if Booker T was injured at this point or not. But you didn't have a lot of people. You didn't have Rick Steiner on this. Rick Steiner, who had just had, something that kind of flopped with Scott Steiner. You didn't have Sting. He was having a sabbatical because that's when he found Jesus and needed to go to rehab and all that stuff and whatever, trading one addiction for another. But you know what? It seems to be doing good for him. And Randy Savage wasn't on there because Randy Savage had been wrestling on bad knees since about 1992. And unfortunately, after a cage match double axe handle that he did the previous Halloween Havoc, a.k.a. 97, I think by Slamboree or Great American Bash of 98, he was done. So, Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio and Juventud Guerrero, or Juven Stooge, I believe, as Larry Zbyszko once called him. Larry New World Order Zbyszko. He drove that joke into the ground in about 2 weeks, and trust me, I know something about driving jokes into the goddamn ground quickly. So, three-way cruiserweight title match. This would not be the only time we would see Billy Kidman because they realized, shit, we need to start the show off hot, and man, we don't have much of a card here, so let's just have them go long. Despite the fumbled LWO stuff and NWO stuff by this point, because let's be honest, Sting really should have ended the NWO, and it shouldn't have been going past maybe the beginning of 98. you could have had like a little bit of stuff, and you could have had Sting team up with Goldberg in the summer, and a few things, and had the NWO, the little bit of it finally taken out. Even though the shirts are selling, you didn't need to leech that much out of it and bleed the well dry. But at least with this, the crowd was into it. And lots of high spots, some great double team spots. Crowd was popping like crazy. Tenay mentioned how Kidman was dealing with injuries like a groin injury and a rotator cuff issue. And that's the thing about Kidman. And I'm not knocking Kidman. I'm not knocking Billy Kidman. For any fans of Billy Kidman, this is not meant as an insult. But the guy, his style, it seemed like he was always injured. Like, that's the one thing about his WWE run. He always seemed to have some injuries. He always seemed to have stuff that would stop and halt anything that he could do. And yeah, the way he did the shooting star press, which was impressive, don't get me wrong. But it was, a lot of them would do it pretty. He would just be like, I'm going to do it, boom. I'm just going, wee. So later, Eddie shows up because Juvi is all in the LWO. Ray is there by default. And he distracts the ref. He tries to get Juvi on top of Kidman. And then Ray kicks Juvi over. And Kidman rolls him up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 14 minutes. That's fine. This match also started about 8.5 minutes into a 2-hour, 45-minute pay-per-view. And unfortunately, would not be the only time that we would be stalling, for a match to start. But then Eddie yells at Ray and yells at Juvi. And this goes on a while. This goes on quite a while. He calls him cream puffs, calls Kidman the sissy boy, tells how you really feel, Eddie, and calls out Kidman for a match later tonight. Kidman shows up, says, well, you call me all this and everything, why don't you wrestle me? Because I'm in jean shorts, you're in jeans. He didn't say that, but he might as well have. And Eddie accepts. So it's Eddie versus Kidman. Juvi, even though he got yelled at and berated and practically called a piece of shit on live pay-per-view by Eddie, is still in Eddie's corner, and Ray's there. And Ray and Eddie have a bunch of history. Ray and Juvi, they try to get involved for their respective guys, but also just kind of stumble around a little bit. It's really odd. Eddie would end up targeting Kidman's knee and beating him down and stuff like that. This is more of an angle match, and eventually, even though we get, we get some people involved. There was a guy that jumped down an LWO shirt or ran down. I thought it was El Dandy, but no, I doubt it was, because who am I to doubt El Dandy? That's right. Had to bring that up. Wonder if you can guess why I'm having a Bret Hart shirt on here, because I will take any opportunity to wear a Bret Hart shirt to remind people that Bret should have been used a lot better in WCW. It's not that everything was a complete flop. He did have some good matches and some good moments, but they could have done so much better with him, especially for about the $2.65 or $2.75 million they were paying him a year. So, Ray stops Eddie from hitting the move, shoves Juvi, shooting star press, 1, 2, 3, and we're 40 minutes into the goddamn show. Also, unfortunately, this would be Eddie's last WCW pay-per-view appearance until June of 99, I think. I mean, I don't even remember if he was on the following Nitro. He would be involved in a car accident New Year's Eve. It was either the day before New Year's or New Year's Eve of 98. And it would be really, really bad. He busts his body up really bad. That's where the painkiller addiction and the alcohol addiction, unfortunately, really would take hold. And even though he would go to WWE, he would come back to WCW June of 99 way too soon. Way too soon. He was in incredible shape, on the outside, but you could tell he was hurting. And then WWE run, that would end sometime after the summer of 2001. He'd be fired in the fall of 2001. Have a little bit of a run on the indies. Wrestle CM Punk, wrestle Ring of Honor. Wrestle for the ill-fated World Wrestling All-Stars, I think on their February pay-per-view, if I remember right. And then he was back in WWE a couple months later, facing off against Rob Van Dam, RVD. And judging by the crowd, it looked like quite a few of the crowd had VD. Or were the end results of VD, because looking at some of those kids, god damn. Anyway, nevertheless, Eddie Guerrero, this is his last pay-per-view match, and then the lack of main event stars was really felt here. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try to feature other people, but there wasn't enough young talent. Prime example, you had Norman Smiley against Prince Iakea, and they tried with Prince Iakea. They made him the artist formerly known as Prince Iakea. And I love Norman Smiley. Norman Smiley got everybody to pop for his big wiggle. That's not a euphemism, even though it sounds like it could be. And Norman is an incredible wrestler, an incredible talent, very gifted, and somebody that really was a shining example of halfway decent entertainment in the last year of WCW. I rewatched last year of WCW, Screaming Norman and all that stuff. He really tried. Bless Norman Smiley. Great trainer, great talent. Very personable, seemingly, in interviews. A lot of people praise him. Why was this on pay-per-view and why was it given 11 minutes? And why was Prince Iakea ever given a lot of featured time? It's not to say that he wasn't talented. He had the charisma of a smush chickpea. Norman, I think, wanted Prince to lay the shit in, but then Prince was laying in a little bit too much or something. I don't know, but Norman looked like he got pissed. He eventually won with the chicken wing. This match was not good. I'm going to move on because this was really, really bad. And here's Scott Hall, an outsider shirt. This is just shortly after him and Nash had that match at Halloween Havoc 98. And he had appeared on Nitro in a tag match. It was Bam Bam... It was Bam Bam and Nash against Goldberg and Scott Hall, I think. He talked about how 1998 was his fault, and people say he has something to prove. He only has something to prove to himself. That 1999 will be his year. It will be his last full year in WCW, unfortunately. And I'm kind of paraphrasing and running through that because this was another example of them wasting time. And look, rest in peace, Scott Hall. It's absolutely terrible how he passed away, and that he was his own worst enemy. That's not a joke. That's not a reference to the Lit song. He was his own worst enemy. But at the end of the day, it really is, one of the greatest what-ifs. What if Scott had his head on straight? So, recaps of Bam Bam attacking Scott Hall and others and main event hype. And then we go to Ernest Miller coming out with Sonny Ono to cut a promo. I'm the greatest and all that. And look, I'll admit, going back to rewatching the last year of WCW, that Ernest Miller had some entertaining moments, but also loved to eat somebody's ass like a bowl of collard greens or something. Collard greens? I actually don't really know how to say it correctly. Don't really know why he wanted to do that. Also don't know why Ernest Miller... Oh, I know why Ernest Miller was there, because he taught Eric Bischoff's son how to do karate. Because, Ernest Miller was a 3-time world karate champion. You might have heard him say that a few times. He took on Perry Saturn, which, boy, they never followed up on Perry Saturn's momentum after beating Raven and disbanding the Flock at Fall Brawl 98, which, even though that was completely overbooked, crowd popped huge. Ernest gives him 5 seconds to leave. He doesn't. Hits him with a clothesline. They're stalling. There's one funny moment where he tries to slide in, and he's just short, and Saturn stomps him. And then Ernest takes over a little bit, later calls Sonny in, and Sonny ends up taking forever to hit a very obvious kick to Miller instead of Perry. And DVD 1, 2, 3. This was fucking brutal. This pay-per-view so far has not been very good. It's felt pretty much like a Nitro. Really, that 3-way could have been on Nitro, even though it was good. And the stuff with Eddie, like that stuff was fine. And I almost wanted to go back to that, and they could have just had Ray and Hoovy wrestle. They could have had Ray and Eddie, or not Ray and Eddie, but Hoovy and Eddie against Ray and Kidman in a match. And it would have been better than putting the last 2 matches on there, even though I'm glad Norman Smiley got a fucking payday. Oh. So, yeah, Miller is pissed at Sonny Ono. And Mean Gene then brings out Ric Flair to talk about the main event. Style and profiling. Woo! Already a better impression than the poor beleaguered guy that played Ric Flair in the Iron Claw movie. Check out my review of the Iron Claw if you want to see how I actually feel. If we get more wrestling movies, it better be better than the fucking Iron Claw. That's all I'm going to say. Rick was fired up. Rick had his heart issues. They had him do the heart thing. Shrieking Fritz von Erich noises. From, Christmas night of 1987? Oh, boy, jeez, boy. Yeah, then we go to a package of Bischoff's, power trip and beating up David Flair. To be fair, I don't think anybody could have beaten any sense into David Flair. He was never going to work. And then beat up Reed. Poor little lad didn't have much fight in him. And then, yeah, just all that was fine. That's a good way to hype all this stuff up. And Ric Flair's heart issue. which he did a callback to in his last match. And I do this because I guarantee he's going to try to wrestle again. Then Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell yell at Konnan, and then here's Luger to separate all this stuff. This NWO bullshit is way, way stretched out. Speaking of stretched out in NWO stuff, Brian Adams, not the Summer of 69 guy, but Crush, Kona Crush, and one member of the Disciples of the Apocalypse, DOA. Brian Adams' singles career was DOA. When your best character is being Demolition Smash, actually the Kona Crush thing was kind of cool. That's about it. Yeah, Brian Adams teamed up with Scott Flash Norton, former IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, by the way. I can't remember if he actually won the championship at this point or if he won it later on. I'm genuinely trying to remember. I've kind of gone blank, but I know that Scott Norton held the championship at least once, possibly twice during his career. He took on Fit Finlay, Fit Finlay, Scott Norton carrying this tag match. That's fine. Who is Fit Finlay's partner? Jerry Flynn. Are you fucking serious? Why was Jerry Flynn? As far as a wrestler, I don't mean anything against him as a person. But that goddamn mullet, that, just derp look on his face where he just looks like he's confused. Like they shined a pointer, a laser pointer at a wall, and he was like, a Persian cat, and he had no idea what the hell he was doing. Or he just had that look like, hey, what the fuck? I'm a good athlete, but wait, I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, he probably was somebody that could kick the shit out of quite a few people. I don't mean fans. I mean, any wrestler could kick the shit out of fans, but maybe he legit was pretty tough. He also was facing Scott Flash Norton. Scott Norton, who looked like he wanted to beat the shit out of Jerry Flynn. This took 8 minutes. What in the WCW Worldwide Pro Saturday Night Thunder was this? Scott Norton at least hit a powerbomb and got the victory. That's it right there. I'm going to throw those away. I'm never going to retro-view this thing again because that would mean I'd be redoing this in another 5 or 10 years, and I ain't going to be doing this shit in another 5 to 10 years. This pay-per-view has been awful so far. Absolutely awful. Poor Finlay and Norton. Brian Adams, I hate to say it, guy kind of fucking self-destructed. And Jerry Flynn, how dare you? Mean Gene brings out Eric Bischoff, who's all smug. He mocks Rick and Rick's spending and Rick's family. Cut to a package of Jericho mocking Konnan. Jericho recently stolen the TV championship after Konnan beat him for it, either just before or at World War III. A lot of this shit mixes together. Jericho mocks Konnan. In the ring then, Konnan says some stuff. He's bowdy, rowdy, and wants people to listen to his podcast. Not that Konnan ever plugs that shit. Konnan took on Jericho, who had Ralphus in his corner, and I think this was Jericho's last, or it was one of his last pay-per-view matches. Because he would show up in WWE in August of 99. I think he might have wrestled to Uncensored 99, and then mostly wrestled on TV. But yeah, it's a TV title match. Jericho took possession of the TV championship. There was a nice spot where he had brought the steps out, and then he got sent, after he had jumped off the ropes, he got sent into the steps. That was a nice little spot there. Jericho, you could tell, was totally checked out by this point, and really, who could blame him? I mean, Jericho now, we could pick on Jericho all we want, and justifiably so. But at this point, he was young and hungry and wanted to do some stuff. And at least he never became a veteran who was holding on to his spot and keeping others down and leeching off of their legacy. Well, I just, decided to knock that. A ref bump, a TV title shot just for 2. And then the Tequila Sunrise, I think that's what it's called, gets the victory. And Konnan keeps the TV championship and regains possession of it. And then I want to say that Jericho actually would lose it to Steiner. Or, yeah, Jericho would win it, lose it to Steiner. Steiner would be the TV champion. And it was just, they were tossing titles around like, a joint at a college party or Sonny backstage at any locker room. Or in any locker room, that is. And also it will be tossed around in jail and hopefully never leave jail and hopefully die in jail. That's what I hope for Sonny. So anyway, the Giant gets mad at Lee Marshall. Probably upset still because he was involved in the AWA and had about as much personality as Driftwood. And actually probably, ended up smelling like Driftwood a little bit later on. Why am I picking on Lee Marshall? I don't know. Eric Bischoff took on Ric Flair. Rick beats the shit out of Eric. Eric hits a kick to the temple. Rick blades. Flair comes back with low blows, gets the figure 4. Hennig comes out, hands the not brass knucks to Eric. He clocks Flair in the head and pins him. That's how we're treating Ric Flair's legacy at Starrcade. You know, Ric Flair was not there for the 91, 92 Starrcades because, and 94 actually. 91, 92 because he was in WWE. 94 because he retired. Thanks, Mr. T, for that, and thanks for all that bullshit. But he'd been at a lot of the other Starrcades. I can't remember if he was at the 97 Starrcade or not. I reviewed that. He's been involved in a lot of Starrcades is the point. And this is how they treat him. I don't even... And then I remember I don't believe he was even involved in Starrcade 2000. Because he was off TV and everything. And it was just Jesus Christ. God damn it. Rick losing to Eric Bischoff. Yeah, it was done with every trick in the book. But still. And then Rick would beat Eric, I think, the next night, if I recall correctly. And become WCW president for a little bit. DDP took on the Giant after we get a package on Diamond Dallas Page, feeling da bada bang. I'm not going to do the Diamond Cutter thing because not only has he trademarked that, but it's his thing. So let's just go with it. The Giant says DDP can't can't hit the Diamond Cutter on him. I'm going to choke slam him and beat him down. DDP was tired of being screwed over. Bret Hart had been involved in all this stuff. He had won the WCW US Championship the night after Halloween Havoc. And then lost it back to Bret sometime in the interim leading up to this event. And there was no DQ called, by the way, after a trash can was used. And then the Giant targeted the arm and the knee and then locked on bear hugs. And this was excruciating because it was the second longest match of the goddamn show. Actually, third longest if you count the entrances for the main event and the fact that both men did what they could once the bell rang. But this was still bell-to-bell the second longest match of the night outside of the opening match, and it felt like it went about 25 minutes. The Giant's last WCW pay-per-view appearance, by the way, because he would soon not get a raise, go to WWE, and become, well, it's the Big Chode. The Giant kept stopping the 3 count. Eventually, we get a ref bump. We get the Giant, kicking out after a 1 count, and then we get a couple top rope clotheslines. He gets the choke slam on, or gets the hand locked on, but then it can't work. DDP gets up to the top, hits a super diamond cutter, 1, 2, 3. At least that got a big pop, but at this point the crowd was just waiting for the main event. And the fact is, this pay-per-view has been excruciating. It has not been good. And then Buffer does the entrances or the intros for Nash and Goldberg. The entrances take about 7 years because of Michael Buffer's Cody Rhodes-like lisp. And Nash and Goldberg had a no DQ World Heavyweight Championship match. Look, I've talked about this multiple times. I talked about it when I reviewed the Goldberg, the Goldberg 24 or something like that, or Untold, about his streak. And I stand by the fact that Goldberg was lucky to get the spot that he got, and his WCW title run had been a flop. He main evented 1 pay-per-view. He defended it at Bash at the Beach 98. He didn't defend it at Road Wild, but won a Battle Royal. He wasn't even wrestling at Fall Brawl 98. He defended it once in the main event at Halloween Havoc against DDP. And then World War III happened, and then this. And look, I'm not saying that you need to always feature the world title in the main event if you have a hot angle, but to not feature him at all on one of your pay-per-views, especially something when you needed every goddamn bullet in the chamber, wasn't exactly great. Big fight field. There were Goldberg sucks chants. There were people getting tired of Goldberg, mainly because, yes, he became so dominant that what else can you do? You could argue that the streak should have ended here. Then the follow-up would have been follow-up just needed to be better. An armbar. Goldberg immediately no-sells it because he's like, no, you can't do that. it was Goldberg's birthday, and Nash has said in interviews that it was 3 days, 3 years and 3 days. No, it was 3 years since the death of his mother from cancer. And cancer's a bitch, and I'm very sorry that Nash had to go through that. That's seriously, I know that sounded like a little somber, but no, cancer's a bitch, and I feel bad for Nash. So, spear to a pop, a low blow. Remember, it's no DQ. And then a double underhook by Goldberg. That was impressive. Big old power slam. I mean, Nash is a big boy. Goldberg, big lad. Did that, and then a spin kick, and then Disco Inferno comes down. Sadly, did not get dropped on his head and taken out as a drooling vegetable. That piece of shit. Bam Bam Bigelow comes out. Scott Hall comes out with a stun gun. He shocked along the razor's edge. I'm ashamed of myself. And then powerbomb, 1, 2, 3. The streak is over. The crowd popped. Nash being the champion wasn't the problem. It was the follow-up. Goldberg could have done so great. If they had reformed the NWO and had Goldberg take him out, that would have been fine. The only thing I hate is that Nash has said in multiple interviews, not just one, but in an interview in 2007 on a Legends of Roundtable thing, he talked about, the finger poke of doom was supposed to lead to the reformation, and a heel group was going to give Goldberg a run, and then he was going to face Hogan. And then he would say, then 2 weeks later, Goldberg put his arm through the goddamn limousine window. About 12 months that Nash skipped over right there, but I'm willing to forgive because of CTE and wine drinking and stuff like that. But yeah, that was the end of Goldberg. If they had... And also, Nash wasn't booking at that point. That's the thing that's stupid about it. Nash apparently started booking sometime in February of 99. Am I saying that it was the best idea to end the streak there? I mean, you had to end it at some point. But if Goldberg had been featured better, I guarantee you they wouldn't have been saying Goldberg sucks. Yes, he was beating people. And he was having matches on Nitro and even Thunder. And he was building the streak. And honestly, if they hadn't monkeyed with the streak and all that, they actually could have had Goldberg be the guy through 99. Unfortunately, they didn't. And outside of Super Brawl, Super Brawl 9 a couple months later, they would never achieve this level of buy rate, and things would just go down and down and down and down. And by May or June of 99, those ratings cascaded down, and they hurt inside, and they would never rise again, and WCW died. So, yeah, Hogan wasn't even on this pay-per-view. Not that he was missed, not that he could have helped it. Agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.